learn to love people where they are. Loving someone where they are doesn't mean you stop wanting growth, and it doesn't mean you ignore what hurts. It means you stop demanding that a person become a different version of themselves just so you can feel okay. It means you choose curiosity over control and connection over fantasy. It means you get honest about what's true, what you need, and what you can and cannot carry. That's not soft work. That's courageous work. We don't just respond to people's behavior. We respond to the meaning we attach to it. And I want to slow that down because it's one of those truths that can feel almost too simple until you realize it's shaping your whole relationship. Someone doesn't text back, and the fact is they didn't text back. That's it. But the story we attach is they don't care, or I'm not important, or I always end up being too much. And once that story shows up, it doesn't just sit quietly in the corner. It takes over your body. Your tone changes. Your nervous system gets loud. You start building a case. And suddenly you're not having a conversation with a person. You're having a conversation with your fear. This is where loving people where they are actually begins, not with them changing. With us getting brave enough to notice what we're making up in the absence of clarity, because our brains are meaning-making machines. If there's a gap, we fill it. We fill it with our history, our insecurities, the last time we were disappointed, the thing we're still carrying from childhood, the thing we promised ourselves would never happen again. We fill it in fast. And then we treat the story like it's a fact. So the practice is this. We separate the data from the drama, the facts from the narrative. And I don't mean drama like you're being dramatic. This is human. This is protection. It's armor. If I decide you don't care, I don't have to risk asking for what I need. If I decide you'll never change, I don't have to risk hoping. If I decide this relationship is unsafe, I don't have to risk being seen. But here's the cost. The armor that protects us from feeling vulnerable also blocks connection. It blocks love. And the language that helps us do this in real time is so simple, it's almost embarrassing. The story I'm telling myself is not you always, not you never, not you clearly don't. Just the story I'm telling myself is that when you didn't respond, you were ignoring me. Or the story I'm telling myself is that you don't want to be here. And when we say it that way, it creates space. It invites clarity. It gives the other person a chance to respond to what's actually happening instead of defending themselves against our assumptions. And we also have to ask ourselves a really brave follow-up. What am I needing right now? Because the story is usually covering a need. I need reassurance. I need reliability. I need respect. I need to feel chosen. I need repair. And when we can name the need instead of blaming the person, we move from control to connection. Now, this doesn't mean we ignore patterns. It doesn't mean we gaslight ourselves into accepting things that hurt. It means we start with truth. We start with, here's what happened. Here's what I made it mean. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I need. That's how we stop punishing people for stories we never verified. That's how we create the possibility of loving them where they are instead of where our fear says they should be. Acceptance says, this is who you are right now. Approval says, and I'm fine with it. Those are not the same. And I think this is one of the biggest places we get stuck when we try to love people where they are, because we hear that phrase and our nervous system immediately goes, wait, does that mean I'm supposed to just be okay with everything? Does it mean I'm supposed to lower my standards, swallow my feelings, and pretend I'm not impacted? Because if that's what it means, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like self-abandonment. So let's get really clear. Loving someone where they are is not the same thing as endorsing every behavior, tolerating disrespect, or staying silent about what hurts. Acceptance is about seeing reality without denial. It's about taking off the if only goggles. If only they were more emotionally available. If only they communicated differently. If only they were more consistent. And those if only thoughts are seductive because they keep hope alive. But sometimes what they really keep alive is a fantasy, and we can't build real connection on fantasy. Acceptance says, this is what I'm working with. This is how they handle conflict right now. This is how they express affection right now. This is their capacity right now. And when we can accept that, we stop exhausting ourselves trying to negotiate with reality. We stop fighting what is. We stop making love contingent on potential. Because the truth is, a lot of our heartbreak comes from loving someone for who they could be, and then resenting them for not becoming that version fast enough. Now, here's where it gets nuanced. Because acceptance without boundaries can become enabling, and boundaries without empathy can become punishment. That's why separating acceptance from approval matters so much. You can accept that someone is struggling with their anger and still say, I'm not willing to be yelled at. You can accept that someone avoids hard conversations and still say, I need us to talk about this. And if we can't, I'm going to take space. You can accept that someone is not able to give you the relationship you want. And that can be heartbreaking. And you can still decide you're not available for that. Acceptance is honesty. Approval is agreement. Love doesn't require you to agree with harm. And I know this can feel scary because a lot of us learned that having needs makes us needy, or that setting boundaries makes us selfish, or that telling the truth will push people away. But clear is kind, vague is unkind. When we don't separate acceptance from approval, we either go controlling, trying to change people so we can feel safe, or we go quiet, going along to get along while resentment grows. And resentment always collects interest. It doesn't stay small. So the brave practice here is to say, I accept what's true about you right now, and I'm going to be honest about what's true for me too. That's not an ultimatum. That's integrity. It's love with clarity. It's compassion with a backbone. And it's the only way to love people where they are without disappearing in the process. Empathy is not agreement. Empathy is presence. It's saying, I'm trying to understand what this feels like for you, and I want to spend time here, because empathy gets misunderstood a lot. And when we misunderstand it, we either use it as a weapon against ourselves, or we dismiss it as something soft that doesn't apply in hard relationships. But real empathy is not weak. It's courageous. It asks us to stay close to someone's humanity without losing access to our own. A lot of us were raised with a version of empathy that sounded like, be nice, don't make waves, just let it go. And that's not empathy. That's appeasement. That's conflict avoidance. That's fear. Empathy is not saying yes to things that harm you. It's not shrinking your needs so someone else doesn't feel uncomfortable. It's not taking responsibility for someone else's emotions. Empathy is simply the willingness to look at another person and think, there's a reason this makes sense to them. Even if I don't agree, even if I would choose differently, even if it's messy. But here's the trap. When you're an empathetic person, especially if you're a caretaker, a fixer, the one who holds everything together, empathy can become your excuse to overfunction. You start doing emotional labor that isn't yours. You start translating what they meant, softening what they did, making it okay because you can see their pain, their past, their stress, and suddenly, empathy becomes the story you tell yourself to justify tolerating things you're not actually okay with. They're under a lot of pressure. They didn't mean it. They had a hard childhood. All of that might be true. And also, your heart can understand their pain while your boundaries protect your dignity. This is where empathy and boundaries have to be partners. Empathy says, I see you. Boundaries say, and I see me too. Empathy without boundaries turns into self-abandonment. You keep showing up over and over and you call it love, but inside you're building resentment. Boundaries without empathy can turn into coldness, where you're technically protected, but emotionally disconnected. The work is that middle place where you can say, I get it, and also say, this isn't okay. Where you can say, I can see you're hurting, and also say, I need you to speak to me with respect. Where you can say, I care about you, and also say, I'm not available for this pattern. And the reason this matters so much for loving people where they are is because loving people where they are requires realness. It requires you to stop performing love and start practicing it. Practicing love looks like listening without fixing. It looks like validating feelings without validating harmful behavior. It looks like staying curious instead of going straight to judgment. It also looks like telling the truth early, not after you've swallowed your needs for months and now everything comes out sideways. If you can hold empathy and boundaries together, you can stay connected without disappearing. You can be kind without being quiet. You can love someone where they are while still honoring what you need to be safe and respected. That's love with integrity. That's the kind that lasts. This one is tough because control often disguises itself as love. We say, I just want what's best for you. But what we mean is, I'm anxious and I need you to be different so I can feel settled. And I'm not saying that to shame anyone. I've done it. Most of us have. When we care deeply, we want to reduce uncertainty. We want to reduce pain. We want the people we love to be okay. And we want our relationships to feel steady. So we start managing. We offer advice that wasn't asked for. We rehearse conversations in our heads. We point out the pattern. We send the podcast. We hint. We push. We nudge. We call it support. And sometimes it is support. But sometimes it's a way to avoid the vulnerability of accepting what is true right now, because here's the hard truth. Loving someone where they are means letting them be in charge of their own growth. It means recognizing that change can't be demanded and it can't be engineered from the outside. People change when they feel a combination of responsibility and safety, not when they feel controlled, judged, or fixed. And when we make someone's change our mission, we unintentionally communicate, you are not enough as you are. Even if we never say it out loud, they feel it. They feel like a project, and it creates distance, not connection. What's underneath the agenda to change people is usually fear. Fear that if they don't change, you'll be disappointed forever. Fear that if they don't change, you'll have to make a hard decision. Fear that if they don't change, it means they don't love you the way you need. And those fears are real. But trying to control someone's growth is not the solution. It just turns your relationship into a constant performance review. Are you improving? Are you doing better? Did you finally get it? And that dynamic is exhausting. It's also lonely for both people. So releasing the agenda doesn't mean you stop having preferences or needs. It doesn't mean you stop naming what matters. It means you shift from control to clarity. Instead of, how do I make them change? The question becomes, what is true about me? What do I need? What am I willing to participate in? What am I not? It becomes, can I love them without rewriting them? And sometimes the answer is yes, because you can accept their pace, their process, their humanity. And sometimes the answer is no, not because you don't love them, but because the relationship as it is isn't healthy or sustainable for you. That's not failure. That's honesty. And there's something else here that matters. When we release the agenda to change someone, we make room for real accountability, because accountability only works when it's chosen. If you're the one dragging someone toward growth, they're not actually growing. They're complying or resisting or hiding. But when you show up with truth, compassion, and boundaries, you create an environment where they can look at themselves without feeling attacked. You can say, this impacts me, without saying, you're broken. You can invite reflection without demanding transformation. Releasing the agenda is an act of love because it says, I trust your agency. It also says, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel and put them back on my own life. And when you do that, you stop carrying the weight of someone else's becoming. You start showing up to the relationship as a whole person, not a manager. And that's where connection has room to breathe. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with clear rules. They're what allow love to last without resentment. And I know the word boundaries can make people tense because a lot of us learned that boundaries are selfish or harsh or something you use when you're done with someone. But the truth is, boundaries are one of the most compassionate tools we have. They're how we stay in relationship without losing ourselves. They're how we choose honesty over simmering anger. And they're how we stop trading our peace for the illusion of harmony. Most of us don't realize we need boundaries until we're already resentful. We keep saying yes when we mean no. We keep staying quiet when we're hurt. We keep being understanding past the point of self-respect. And then one day we explode, or we shut down, or we ghost, and everyone's confused because we never told the truth early. Resentment is a sign that something needs to be named. It's a signal that we've crossed our own limits too many times. And the tragedy is that we often blame the other person for taking more than we offered, when the real issue is that we weren't clear about what we could actually give. Using boundaries as an act of love means we stop using them as weapons. We stop making boundaries a punishment like, fine, I'm done with you. Or if you don't do what I want, you don't get access to me. That's control. That's not a boundary. That's a threat. A real boundary is simply a statement of what's true for you, paired with what you will do to take care of yourself. It's calm, it's clear, it's consistent. It's, I'm not available for conversations where we're yelling. If we can't talk respectfully, I'm going to step away and we can revisit this later. I care about you and I'm not able to keep rescuing you from the same consequences. That's not cruelty. That's accountability with dignity. And boundaries are the bridge between loving people where they are and loving yourself where you are. Because when you can't set boundaries, love them where they are turns into, I'll tolerate anything. And that's not love. That's fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being seen as difficult. But love doesn't require self-erasure. Love requires truth. It requires you to show up as you are, not as someone who's easy to live with. Boundaries are how we protect what matters: respect, safety, emotional honesty.